I'm just going to circle back today, and we've mentioned this one before, uh, Providence by John Piper, and he really goes through the whole concept of sovereignty. Uses the bigger term providence for it, includes a little bit more than just sovereignty with it, but he's talking about God's sovereignty. And he highlights and goes through the whole God's sovereignty in the Old Testament, different aspects of where God takes, and it's especially in the Old Testament, where God takes wacky things that happen and problems in people's life, and God works them toward His purposes. And it builds our trust in God's sovereignty. If we can trust that God is sovereign, we're going to be able to have peace. One instance of that John Piper focuses on in the book is the example of Joseph. And I think that's a perfect example for what we're talking about today. Joseph had a number of trials that came into his life. I mean, his brothers hated him so much they sold him into slavery. They were going to kill him, so I guess it turned out better. They sold him into slavery. He had to go into exile into Egypt. Eventually, he's falsely accused and ends up in jail. He gets forgotten in jail. Eventually, he gets a chance to stand before Pharaoh and give God's wisdom and God's insight and His revelation, and God brings good out of it. But in all of that, God took all the bad and used it to save Joseph and to save his whole family and to bring about the nation of Israel. God's a God of redemption. And Joseph knew that he could trust God. And all the way through each bad circumstance that happened, he was able to sit back and do his best and use his gifts and use his abilities to make the most out of every situation. How do you do that? Well, I think you only do that by trusting that God has a plan and that He can work it out in the end and that He's going to do the best in the end. And therefore, I can have peace in every situation and I can do my best. Right? And that's exactly what Joseph does. And when he wraps it all up at the end of his life, the brothers are there, the family's there, and they're kind of worried. What's Joseph going to do to us now that he's the big dog and we're the ones that kicked him out? The whole family gets to Egypt. They've been saved. They have the provision of God because of the hand of Joseph, and in all of that, they're kind of worried at that point. We're the ones that kicked Joseph out, and now he's the big man on campus, and he's got the power. What is he going to do? And in Genesis 50:20, Joseph says this. He says, "You meant it for evil, but God meant it for good." And I think that puts the whole concept right in perspective. That we've got all this, we've got evil in this world, we've got difficulty, we've got trial. We're not going to feel safe all the time. But if our trust is in God to work it all out in the end, then even when we feel unsafe, we can know that, no, I am safe. I am safe. And even when my first inclination is to worry, right? I can say, no, I can have peace because my security is in God. My safety is in God. My future is in God. And my peace is in God. And so John Piper addresses that particular illustration, and he says, God redeems sinful acts, and He can take the bad and He can turn it into good. And that's exactly what we're taught. That's what gives us peace. Knowing that God does that and is in the business of doing that for us.